Hello, 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 and welcome to Anchor Watch. I am your host, Bobby Jones, and there's so much to cover this week. I just want to get right into it. So, this week we're going to talk about the instruments of national power, and what I mean by that is the guests that we have had on the show here the last few weeks. That was not happenstance. That was by design. And the reason it was by design is because I wanted to have subject matter experts talk to you about how the United States as a collective nation operates. And by doing so, I'm going to pull it all together today so you get a basic overview of how the United States, particularly since the end of World War II until today, has classically operated. But before I do that, we're going to get into some very relevant headlines, things that I think you definitely need to know. And once again, our reoccurring segment on American Civics 101, we're going to talk about Article 2 of the Constitution of the United States. And that covers the office of the presidency. And believe you me, based on the last 6 months, we need to get in depth about how and what the president is allowed to do. And most importantly, what the framers had in mind when they put the office together. So let's go ahead and get started. Let's talk about some headlines. Moving on here. First headline I want to bring up: the United States and Russia have agreed to a peace summit in Alaska. Now, what do we we say peace summit, and this is in the shadow of the panic in this headline here that Ukraine fears because the Trump administration has not pushed back on the possible giving away of territory to Russia in the Ukraine war as a means of facilitating peace. Now, I'm going to ask the very logical question to all of you out there who are watching. How is it possible to have a peace summit when the two entities at war are not going to be there? Because it's just going to be Putin and Trump at this point. No Zelensky, no Ukrainian representation. That makes zero sense. In every conflict in modern times, there has been at least a representative to at least sign off on the agreement, whether it's coerced or not. To be able to have a peace summit in Alaska without any Ukrainian representation, to me, reeks of a sham. Anything agreed there, why would Ukraine agree to it? Even if you're talking about, even if they were allowed or wanted to give away territory just for the terms of peace, they're not there to represent their own self interest. I can't think of any other conflict recently where that is allowed. So just think about that as you continue to hear the hype train for the summit. And make no mistake, the hype train and everything that's happening within the Trump administration is part of a coordinated effort to dodge the never ending, never dying story of the Epstein files. Congress is still out of session. And so all of these things are being thrown to keep you, the American public, away from that because the White House, the administration realizes that you care about this. So I personally have little to no hope about a peace agreement happening with this summit because the number one group, the number one person, the number one nation that should be there, Ukraine, has yet to say that they will be there. So take that for what it's worth. In other international news, we have Trump and China and tariffs once again back in the news. Now, despite everything that you heard the Trump administration say, once again, we're watching him back off. The tariffs that were supposed to go into effect now have another additional 90-day pause. Now, I don't know how many times the United States of America can lay out a red line, a deadline, and then back off of it and try to retain any international credibility. And if you noticed, this has happened specifically with China and Russia over the course of this tariff battle. They have said this, they backed off. They have said this, they backed off. I think the next step you will see will be some type of economic summit direct talks between China and the United States, i.e., Trump and Xi. However, I don't know what type of stability will come out of this while this dance goes back and forth. The recent economic reports have not been favorable. 2.7 inflation rate, the jobs report that caused the head of Bureau and Labor Statistics to be fired because it was underwhelming. Every sign that we see from the economy has shown that it is slowing down and trouble is on the horizon. Every economist that we've talked to, we had Dr. Charles Ballard here just the other day, and he said none of this makes sense, primarily because there's no stability that is found in the strategy or lack thereof being implemented by the Trump administration. I have never seen in my lifetime and anything that I've seen in recent history where the economic strategy, as in long term plan, is to go back and forth with threats of tariffs. We've never done that before. Never, never. And mind you, like Dr. Ballard said last week, the United States has deficits with some countries, but surpluses when it comes to trade in others. But at the same time, your big businesses down to your small businesses on Main Street lack the ability to do long range planning because they do not know what the tariffs will do to their bottom line. They cannot order material ahead of schedule because the price fluctuates. They cannot say products are coming because they don't know how long it will take for certain materials to reach them in order to manufacture the products. If you Google this, you'll see this story is picking up a lot of steam all over the country. And what's very interesting is it goes from big companies like Ford, where it has directly impacted their quarter earnings, all the way down to Main Street, where someone who may be a florist in your neighborhood is affected by the tariffs. And so the lack of visibility, the lack of predictability when it comes to America's economic policy is having a real world effect. And to be real, if the United States doesn't sit down with China and hammer something out, this may be our future for the next couple of years. The yo yoing, the accordion effect of tariffs. Now, in other domestic news, unless you've lived under a rock here in the last 24 hours, President Trump has federalized local law enforcement in Washington, D.C. Now, this is fascinating on many levels. I have a video that will be coming out on my Substack and on Minus Touch Network here in a couple of days, specifically addressing this. We are watching a takeover that is not necessary. We're watching a takeover that, if I'm being fully transparent, I think is a blueprint for the president to go into other cities outside of Washington, D.C. and repeat the same playbook. So let's break down what we're actually seeing. Number one, President Trump talked about the crime in Washington, D.C. Well, the crime has been going down quickly in Washington, D.C., particularly over the last 2 years. Since 2003, D.C. has seen a 26% decrease in crime. And depending on homicide, robbery, violent crimes, going down quickly, faster than the national average and faster than other cities that are in Republican states, to include Birmingham, Alabama, Oklahoma City. I can go down the list. Why? I looked up these stats yesterday because I wanted to fact check everything the man was saying. Additionally, he made a point to go after Democratic-led cities and Democratic states like Baltimore, Philadelphia, places like that. These cities also have the unique correlation of being majority minority cities, i.e., Black and brown people. Okay. He didn't talk about Oklahoma City. He talked about Baltimore, Maryland. So what he's doing is he's dog whistling. He's dog whistling the actual threats that he thinks, and he's using racism to justify fascism, meaning in his mind, in a perfect society, he has military and militarized law enforcement at the street level of cities. That is the goal. That is the goal. Now, there's another piece that you need to pay attention to with this DC federalization. It's one thing to go after criminals, fine. He wants to go after he wants to go after the homeless. And Chris and I see exactly what you're saying, and you're right. He's grasping at straws to make it seem like the situation is worse than it actually is. Again, this is by design. He is talking about homeless people like they are animals. Many of them veterans in DC. Notice he said we're going to clean them up. Doesn't say where he's going to send them. For all we know, they could be going to Alligator Alcatraz. They could be going to some concentration camp that they're setting up and that they have literally over $100 billion to set up. It's not a coincidence that ICE and all these different facilities have the funding that they have and that they are doing the cross coordination with other federal agencies. Let me say that very close one more time. ICE is authorized to do cross coordination with various federal groups now, to include FEMA, to include the DEA, to include all of these organizations where the bottom line is they can disappear you, whether you're an American citizen and now whether you're homeless. So let's go down the path of how we got here. It started by saying we're going after the violent, criminal, illegal immigrants in the country. Then it went from we're going to go after them and illegal immigrants. Now we're going from illegal immigrants to homeless people, okay, who are American citizens that have every goddamn right the Constitution verifies. Do you see how we're ramping it up from the boogeyman to now American citizens who are unhoused? Okay, then it'll go from those in poverty, and then it'll go to those who vocalize dissent against the administration. This is a slope, people, and it is by design. And the only way you can actually enforce this is you have to have federal dollars and federal manpower behind it for two reasons. Number one, the scope of what they're trying to do is large, but most importantly, federal government can overrule local. And so even when your neighborhood sheriff is like, stop it, this is wrong, they're going to override and over veto that that pushback. That's what's happening. And we're slowly just walking down the ramp to that, where if they just don't like what you say, hell, if they don't like where you look, though, if they don't like where you live, if they don't like, et cetera, now they'll have grounds to continue to arrest you. This is exactly what happened in Germany. This is exactly what happened in Italy in the early 20th century. This is not a new playbook. It's just being brought out, dusted, and being played here. And this is not an exaggeration. This is not me jumping up and down and saying, oh my gosh, the sky is falling. No, this is happening, people. It's happening. Makes any sense what was going on? Jason, I agree. But see, what's happening is the people who could actually, create change, the people who actually could raise noise where Congress and local officials would notice, they're still comfortable. So they're going after the least amongst us. When you have homeless people, a lot of them have mental issues that have been undiagnosed. They're veterans that have been unhoused. And now we're going to treat them like crap. We're just going to sweep them away. Again, Trump in the executive order and on stage at the dais yesterday did not say what's supposed to happen to these people. They'll just disappear. That's something out of a freaking like sci-fi novel to me. That's unbelievable. And people are not outraged and asking questions about it. And if that wasn't enough to get me ticked off, within the last week, the Secretary of the Air Force, which with no, I have no illusions that did not come from the Secretary of Defense and i.e. Trump, they are kicking out transgender service members that have 15 to 18 years of service. And they're not only kicking them out involuntarily, they are being denied early retirement. They're being denied all of their retirement benefits. This is the ultimate betrayal. Let me just lay out a couple of things. Number one, the time that these people signed up to join the United States Air Force and go fight the global war on terrorism, again, the longest war America's ever fought, we were smack dab in the middle of it. And they said, I'll do it. 99 99.9% dang near of Americans said, nope, I'm not going to be that person. But they said yes, and they have endured. And now, when they can see the finish line, when they can finally be given the peace and rest that they should get after serving the prime years of their life for our country, these intolerant bastards at the Department of Defense have said, no, we're going to kick you out. And just to be evil and just to be spiteful, we're not going to let you get any retirement benefits. You've got to be kidding me on this. I am so angry about this because if this was me, I'd be losing my ever loving mind. I don't know how they are taking this. I just know that is 100% wrong. It's 100% wrong. There's no excuse. There's nothing anybody can say to me that will say this is fine. See, we've done this before. After World War II, with all the benefits, the GI Bill, the VA loans, all of those great things that created the American middle class, there were two specific groups that were denied those benefits. A lot of African Americans and a lot of gay people. It was called pink slipping. Google it, look it up. When the middle class and the suburbs were being created, those two groups were left out on purpose. On purpose. And at the same time, the same people that left people who look like me out, they had the nerve and audacity to tell us to pull ourselves up by our bootstraps. You know, the African Americans that landed at Normandy, that were at Iwo Jima, all of those things denied. The gay service members who were in the same locations as everybody else and hid who they were and what they were, denied. And instead of learning from that blatant robbery of benefits, they have dusted off the playbook and they're doing it again. People, you need to educate yourselves on our history. Every time you hear something that doesn't make sense, Google if it's happened before in American and world history. And I guarantee you it has, because the administration lacks the imagination to do anything. They're just going to play the hits that are the most racist or whatever ist they can find. And everybody, and I mean every American, should be pissed off about this.